And this spark, I want you to be able to recognize, because that spark, I'd like to see you have it grow from just a tiny little spark, which means you can hardly see it, to a fragment, to a piece, to a larger chunk, if you will, to a section, so that this spark within you that you see up here is growing and growing and growing until it absolutely becomes even more than you imagined. T.S. Eliot, the great American poet, said, "We shall not cease from exploration, but at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated, but to know it for the first time." I paraphrase that, it's off a little. To know it for the first time. I think that T.S. Eliot might have been speaking about death, but I'm not. I think that we can come to know this place from which we originated, the place to which we return, all of us, by allowing this spark to become something bigger than just an occasional thing where you extend an act of kindness someplace, or you have it at the church or at the mosque or at the synagogue on a holy day or a holy observance, that it can become your way of being. There was a great teacher in India. His name was Vivekananda. Vivekananda came to the West as a young teacher, a very profound teacher. And he was asked the question, but how do you do this? How do you access this higher self? How do you make this your reality? And he said these words to his devotees, and I say them to you. He said, in the springtime, go out and observe the blossoms on the fruit trees. He said, the blossoms vanish of themselves as the fruit grows. And so too will the lower self, the false self, the ego, vanish as the divine grows within you. It's about allowing yourself to recognize you must have this spark because this is what you came from, and this is what you return to. And as this spark becomes a fragment and becomes a section and becomes larger and larger, you reach what I call in Wishes Fulfilled, the 3rd chapter, the highest self. And what is the highest self? This is the one that's going to surprise you a bit. The highest self is the self that you haven't been trained to believe in. You've been trained to believe in your ordinary awareness. Your highest self is where you begin to recognize your connection to your source, to the Tao, to the divine, to God. There were 3 very important teachings that came to me before I put this program together and before I wrote Wishes Fulfilled. The first was a book by a man named U.S. Anderson, U.L.S. Anderson. Passed away in 1986. Very profound teacher. And he wrote a book called 3 Magic Words, which I have had people tell me you must read. So it's fairly heavy reading, but the kind of reading that I love. And there's 12 chapters in the book. And you get to the 12th chapter and you keep waiting for the 3 magic words because he doesn't say what they are. And at the end of each chapter, there's a meditation. And in this meditation, you practice and put into the awareness within yourself of recognizing the highest place within yourself. And ultimately, at the very end, he said these words. Chapter 12, the very end of it. It's called The Veil Removed. This is the ineffable secret, the ultimate illumination, the key to peace and power. You are God. Those are the 3 magic words. If you will accept this towering truth and dare to stand atop this magnificent pinnacle, universal consciousness will be revealed to you from within. God is there. It is he who peers from behind your eyes, who is your own consciousness, who is your very self. You are not just a part of God, you are altogether God. And God is altogether you. Now, that's scary stuff for a lot of people. We weren't raised to believe that. I'm not saying that you ought to go out into the world and say, excuse me, but you know who you're talking to, that I am God. And the reason that we laugh is because we think of God as the God that we've created in our own image, the God of the ego, the God who's angry, the God who wants special favors, the God who has the ability to heal but withholds it. But there's another word that Jesus used in the New Testament, and this is the God I speak of, quoting him. God is love. And he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in me, and I in him. God is love, pure, unconditional, blissful, divine love. That's who you are. The second great teaching was a man named Neville Goddard. Passed away in 1972. Lectured over in California, particularly in the 40s and 50s and 60s. I read his book, The Power of Awareness, 7 times. I gave it to each one of my children at Christmas a couple of years ago, and they called me up and they said, Dad, it's great, but I don't understand it. It's a little heavy. I said, well, then maybe it's part of my dharma to make it a little clearer. And chapter 27, the last chapter of his book, The Power of Awareness, it says this: in all of creation, in all of eternity, in all the realms of your infinite being, the most wonderful fact is that which is stressed in the first chapter of this book. You are God. You are the I am that I am. You are consciousness. You are the creator. This is the mystery. This is the great secret known by the seers and prophets and mystics throughout the ages. This is the truth that you can never know intellectually. If you want to understand something intellectually, what you must do is analyze it, come up with a formula for it, study it, look at other experts about it, and come up to a conclusion. If you want to understand something spiritually, you must first experience it. You must come to know this within. In the New Testament, which I read completely before I wrote Wishes Fulfilled, Jesus is about to be stoned. And he says, why would you stone me? And they say, because you blaspheme. You are a man, and you claim to be God. And Jesus responds in his words, is it not written in your laws that I have said you are gods? All of you. We are all gods. We have within us, not the God that so often we are taught is outside of us, but the God that is love, the God that is perfect love, the soul that wants to expand because it is infinite and doesn't want to be restricted. And I came across some great teachings that were sent to me. They showed up, as we often think they show up as accidents, but you come to realize that there are no accidents in this universe. Everything that takes place have the pieces moved around by something bigger than all of us. And so it was called the I Am Discourses. And I quote from the I Am Discourses. The first expression of every individual everywhere in the universe, either in spoken word, silent thought, or feeling, is I am, recognizing its own conquering divinity. The student, me, you, all of us, endeavoring to understand and apply these mighty yet simple laws, must stand guard more strictly over his thoughts and expression, in words or otherwise. For every time you say, I am not, I cannot, I have not, you are, whether knowingly or unknowingly, throttling that great presence within you. These words, I am. I opened up this program with the words, I am well, I am perfect health. And where do you think they came from? What do these words, I am, mean? A very quick retracing of the story of Moses. Moses, this little baby who was born at a time when the Pharaoh had ordered all male children to be drowned in the Nile, and Moses' mother took his little baby, put him in a basket, and floated him down the Nile. Moses was discovered by the Pharaoh's daughter. The Pharaoh's daughter raised Moses as her own son and the Pharaoh's grandson. But along in his late teen years, he got into a conflict and ended up seeing one of the Israelite slaves being mistreated, and he ended up killing him. So Moses had to take off because he was afraid for his own life. And he went out into the Sinai, and there married Zipporah and had children and was out as a shepherd. And as the Torah tells us, as it says in Exodus, he comes across a burning bush one day that is not being consumed. And the bush speaks to him. And rather than even misquote this even a little, I brought from my hotel room You wouldn't steal the Bible, would you, Wayne? No, I'll put it back. So the bush speaks in Exodus chapter 3 and says, Moses, Moses. And the first words that Moses says to God are, here I am. Then he said, do not draw near here, this place. Take off your sandals and for your feet, for this place where you stand is holy ground. And God speaks to Moses and says, I want you to go to the Pharaoh and I want you to free your people. And Moses is going, wait, hold on here. Who am I? And who are you? Moses says to God, who am I that I should go to the Pharaoh and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? So he said, I will certainly be with you, and this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses says to God, indeed, when I come to the children of Israel, and I say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And God says to Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations. My name is I am that I am. Now, every single time that you use the words I am, you are citing the name of God right from the holiest books. And every time you say the words, I am weak, I am poor, I am unlucky, I am unhappy, I am sick, I am unable to attract into my life what you want, you are desecrating the name of God. God did not say, I will be. My name is, I hope things work out well. My name is, maybe things will show up that I wanted, but possibly not. He said, I am that I am. You must be conscious of how you use these words. I am. I am strong. I am well. I am content. Even if your senses tell you something different, I am. And as we move now into the meat of this program, you'll see that putting the words I am in front of something into your mind and imagination is a very powerful way to attract into your life, recognizing your own divinity. I am God is not blasphemy. It is your identity. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. In my study of the work that I mentioned earlier, particularly the work of Neville and the work of U.S. Anderson and the I Am discourses, I came up with, in putting that all together, what I call five wishes fulfilled foundations for being able to attract into your world and become the kind of person that you expect yourself to be. Remember what I said about the quote on the wall of the swimming pool. If you want to accomplish anything, which means to become an extraordinary level of consciousness person, you must first expect it of yourself. You must see yourself and be unafraid to say to yourself, I am connected at all times to my source, to the divine mind, to the Tao, to God, to that which is the creator of all. I am a part of it. And the first of these 5 foundations I call imagination. Imagination. Many of our greatest thinkers have spoken about the power of imagination. William Blake said that what is now proved was once only imagined. Now think about the importance of that. If you want to have something show up in your life, the kind of person you would like to become, manifest something new into your life, something powerful, whatever it might be, you obviously must first be able to imagine it. Your imagination. This is yours and yours alone. You can place anything into your imagination that you want to place there, independent of what anybody else says about it, independent of what your senses tell you, independent of all the evidence that may be to the contrary. You can place into your imagination an I am that represents what you would like to attract into your life and make it come into fruition. Einstein's most famous quote, one of his most famous observations, he said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. Placing these I ams into your imagination, I had some of you I'm sure know about it because it's been all over the papers and so on, a diagnosis of leukemia a couple of years ago. And for a while, I kind of began to believe some of the things that were being told to me about what happens when you have this particular kind of leukemia. And I have instead, in the last year or so, had some of the most amazing, astonishing things happen into my life, where I have felt I was just so alive and so strengthened and so fully connected to my source, knowing. Basically, I have a knowing in here that life itself is a sexually transmitted terminal disease, okay? That's basically the fact, all right? So I'm not saying that all you have to do is put into your imagination an I am that says I am, and you're gonna live forever. That isn't, but every moment that you do have until you are called can be a moment of exquisite, extraordinary power living from that place. And that's the decision that I made. I have never felt so powerful as I have the last several years, since I recognized the power that I have in my imagination to place something there and live from it. Einstein once said, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want your children to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. It's one of the reasons I've taken to writing children's books, to give children an opportunity to explore that thing called their imagination from the time that they're just little boys and little girls. And what I have in my imagination is a do not disturb sign. And it's like mentally inside, I've placed that in there. I do not anyone to disturb or try to change around anything that I have placed in there about what is possible for me. So you never want to place into your imagination any thought that you would not want to materialize. You never want to allow in your imagination to be contaminated by the way life used to be. Your imagination is yours. Don't let any other people influence you. Never allow people's ideas about what is possible or impossible for you to occupy your imagination. I've called it, throughout my life, I've called it being a scurvy elephant. When I was in the 3rd grade, I was living in a foster home out in Mount Clemens, Michigan, and I came home from school, and I talked to Mrs. Scarf, and I said, Mrs. Scarf, what's a scurvy elephant? And she said, where did you hear that? And I said, I don't know, Mrs. Poole, my third grade teacher, was talking to the principal, Mrs. Smith, and she said Wayne Dyer was in his classroom and called me a scurvy elephant. So she got on the phone and she called up, and the principal said, oh, that's Wayne. He gets everything mixed up. She didn't say that he was a scurvy elephant in her classroom. She said that he was a disturbing element in her classroom. A disturbing element is someone who has in their imagination the possibility that they can do anything, that all things are possible. Again, it's one of those great lines from the New Testament. With God, all things are possible. Now you tell me, what does that leave out? What does all things are possible leave out? That doesn't leave out the possibility that we can defy gravity, that we can soar, that we can heal ourselves, that we can create magnificent prosperity in our life, that we can change the world. I said at one of the breaks here to the audience here tonight, I really believe that if this message gets out there into the world, we can shift the consciousness of this planet. If enough of us begin to believe, we're placing into our imagination a world that we want to live in, that has no limitations, and that is based on living from a place of love and kindness and God consciousness and spiritual awareness, divine mind at work. I believe it's possible. Thank you. But we have to do it with our imagination. It has to begin with our imagination. Collectively, if enough of us begin to believe that we can create that kind of a world, if public television can put on these kinds of programs, which is why I am a part of public television, because this is what they broadcast. This is what comes into our homes. The energy of all things are possible, not the energy of violence and hatred and, and all of the silly stuff that you see so frequently on commercial and cable television, especially the violence and especially the rude communication between young children and their parents and so on. You don't see that here. It's why I'm here raising money for this station and all public television stations. Einstein, once again, this man of imagination, said logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. That's the first of these wishes fulfilled foundations. The second foundation is very significant and very important. I call it living from the end. This is one of the harder ones for people to get, but I'd like you to go again to the New Testament. Look at Romans 4:17. In the presence of him whom he believed God, who gives life to the dead and calls those things which do not exist as though they did. And calls those things which do not exist as though they did. Those are very important, significant words. You have to be able to call the things which you have not seen yet materialize and manifest into your physical world. You have to be able to say to yourself, I call those things that I would like to become as if they already do. And you place into your imagination fearlessly the I ams which you would like to create for yourself. And when it's time for me to write another book, I don't even know what it's going to be. I just know that it starts germinating inside me. And it's like a calling, it's like a passion. And I'm over there at my writing space. And before I do, I come up with the title. And before I even write one word, I did it with this book, Wishes Fulfilled. I take a jacket, this isn't even my book. And I take this jacket and I ask the art department at Hay House if they will please design a book with this title. And I put it around another book, which I have done, and I set it on my writing space next to Ralph Waldo Emerson and Jesus Christ picture and Paramahansa Yogananda and my children and the people that I love deeply and profoundly in my life. And I look at it with 3 white candles that I light every single time I sit over there. And I look at that jacket. And it's as if I call those things, the book does not exist. I call it as if it did. When my leukemia diagnosis came in, the information that was sent to me continuously was, it's incurable. This is something that you can't change. And I would say to my children who would send me this, I would say, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't send me that kind of stuff. And they'd say, what do you mean? Why, Dad? Why wouldn't you want us to send that? It says that right in there. I said, what part of I am well is it that you don't understand? Because I have placed that into my imagination. I have a wonderful quote by the man I've cited before. His name is Neville, and it goes like this. He says, disregard appearances, conditions. In fact, disregard all evidence of your senses, that is what your eyes and ears tell you, that deny the fulfillment of your desire, whatever it is you want to attract into your life. Disregard appearances, conditions, in fact, all evidence of your senses that deny the fulfillment of your desire. Rest in the assumption that you already are what you want to be. For in that determined assumption, you and your infinite being, your extraordinary self, which is what this program is about, are merged in creative unity, and with your infinite being, God, all things are possible. God never fails, and you are a piece of that which never fails. And you are going to move beyond just being a piece and just being